Picture this. I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, not a literal one, but the kind you feel in your chest when you know something's about to shift, irreversibly. My name's Amber, and at 38, I've carved out a life that's never quite fit into the neat little boxes society hands out. I've always been drawn to the jagged edges, the places where rules blur and the air feels electric with possibility. My husband, Leon, is the embodiment of that edge. He's a man who carries intensity like a second skin, his piercing gaze cutting through any pretense, his quiet strength a force that's both grounding and unsettling. I've never been able to look away from him, not since the day we met, and certainly not now, after over a decade of marriage. Our bond isn't built on the usual pleasantries or safe little compromises. No, Leon and I have always thrived on raw, unfiltered honesty. We've sat across from each other late at night, glasses of red wine in hand, the world outside our window fading into a distant hum. In those moments, we've shared things most couples wouldn't dare whisper, desires that linger on the fringe, the kind that might make others flinch. We've questioned boundaries, not out of recklessness, but out of a need to understand each other completely. There's a thrill in that, a quiet rebellion in peeling back the layers of what's expected and diving into what's real, even if it's dangerous. I've always trusted him to lead me into those uncharted waters, and he's trusted me to follow, or sometimes to push him further. Leon isn't a man who walks alone, though. He's got a tight circle, 4 friends who've been with him for years, each one a puzzle piece in a picture I've never fully deciphered. There's Damon, the brooding artist, with a sharp jawline that seems carved from stone and haunted eyes that see too much. He's the kind of person who can sit in silence and still dominate a room, his sketches often darker than the shadows under his gaze. Then there's Raphael, the charming businessman, all polished smiles and tailored suits, but there's a predatory edge beneath that charm, a glint in his eye that makes you wonder what he's really after. Jules is the quiet intellectual, disarming in his gentleness, always observing, always thinking. His words few, but heavy when they come. And Miles, the rugged outdoorsman whose sheer presence fills any space he's in, his rough hands and weathered face telling stories of a life lived hard and without apology. These men are Leon's inner circle, bound by something I've never quite grasped, an unspoken loyalty that hums beneath their interactions. I've watched them over the years, sensing the weight of their history, but I've never pried. Some things, I've learned, are better left untouched until the time is right. Leon and I, though, we've never been content to leave things untouched for long. So there we were, on a rainy evening that felt heavier than most. The kind where the world outside seems to press against the windows with a quiet insistence. I was curled up on our old leather couch, the worn texture cool against my skin, a book resting forgotten in my lap. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp in the corner casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The patter of rain was a steady rhythm, almost hypnotic, until Leon's voice cut through it like a blade. He was sitting across from me in his favorite armchair, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped as if holding something fragile yet dangerous. His eyes, those piercing eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that made the air feel charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Imagine this," he said, his tone measured, deliberate, each word chosen with care. 4 men, my friends. You alone with them. Everything happens only with your consent. But I want to watch. The words hung there, heavy, almost tangible. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe. A nervous laugh slipped from my lips, sharp and unsteady, breaking the silence as I searched his face for any hint of a joke, a crack in that unyielding gaze. But there was nothing. His expression didn't falter, didn't soften. It burned with a quiet fire, a seriousness that pinned me in place. My heart started racing, a wild thrum in my chest, and I felt the heat creeping up my neck. My palms grew slick with sweat, and I wiped them on my jeans, trying to steady myself, to process what he'd just laid bare. My breath caught, shallow and quick, as the reality settled in. He wasn't joking. This wasn't some fleeting thought or idle fantasy tossed out in the heat of a late-night confession. This was real, something he'd considered, something he wanted. I didn't know what to say. My mind spun, a chaotic whirl of disbelief and something else, something I couldn't name yet. I just sat there, staring at him, the rain outside growing louder in my ears, mirroring the storm building inside me. Leon didn't push, didn't say another word. He just watched me, his gaze steady, giving me space to wrestle with it. But I could feel the weight of his expectation. Subtle, yet undeniable. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake it. His words replayed in my head at the most mundane moments. While I was pouring coffee in the morning, the steam rising in lazy curls, or when I was flipping through a magazine, the pages blurring as my thoughts drifted. I was torn, caught in a tangled mess of shock and curiosity, and, if I'm honest, a strange thrill that flickered somewhere deep, unbidden. I didn't know if I was appalled or intrigued, or maybe both, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. Leon, meanwhile, carried on as if nothing had changed, but I could feel the shift between us, a silent undercurrent that pulsed through every glance, every touch. It was like we were both waiting for me to decide, to step into the unknown, or pull back into the safety of what we'd always known. And then, just when I thought I might drown in my own indecision, Leon handed me an invitation, literal, embossed on thick, cream-colored paper. It was for a private gathering at a house I'd never been to, with no explanation beyond a time and an address. My stomach twisted as I read it, knowing this wasn't just a casual dinner. This was it. The moment where fantasy could become reality. The drive to the house felt endless, the road winding through dense forest as the last light of day bled into dusk. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, my knuckles pale, the hum of the engine a poor distraction from the storm in my head. When I finally pulled up, the house loomed before me, sprawling and isolated, a modern fortress of glass and stone nestled among towering pines. The air was thick with their scent, sharp and grounding, mingling with the faint chirp of crickets in the distance. I stepped out of the car, my heels crunching on the gravel drive, and took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. The sky above was a bruised purple, the kind of twilight that feels like it's holding its breath, and I couldn't shake the sense that I was walking into something I couldn't fully prepare for. Inside, the house was a world unto itself. The door swung open before I could knock, revealing a grand foyer with soaring ceilings that seemed to swallow sound. Flickering candles lined the walls, their golden light casting long, wavering shadows that danced across polished marble floors. Soft jazz drifted from hidden speakers, a sultry undercurrent that wrapped around me like a whisper. My eyes were drawn to a long dining table, set for an intimate group, crystal glasses glinting beside bottles of deep red wine, the kind Leon and I would share on our late-night confessions. Every detail felt deliberate, curated, as if the space itself was part of the game. And then I saw them. Damon, Raphael, Jules, and Miles stood in the grand room beyond the foyer, each dressed with a precision that felt almost ceremonial. Damon's black suit clung to his frame, his haunted eyes catching the candlelight as he tilted his head slightly, assessing me. Raphael's tailored navy blazer and crisp white shirt screamed effortless power, his smile polite but sharp, like he already knew something I didn't. Jules wore a charcoal sweater over a collared shirt, understated yet elegant, his gaze soft but piercing as he adjusted his glasses. Miles, in a dark green jacket and black trousers, looked like he'd just stepped in from the wilderness, his ruggedness a stark contrast to the refined setting, yet somehow fitting. They stood in a loose semicircle, their silence heavier than the air around us, their expressions unreadable as they watched me cross the threshold. I felt exposed under their collective stare, like a specimen under glass, and my pulse quickened, a nervous heat blooming in my chest. Leon was there too, but he kept his distance, settling into a leather armchair in the corner of the room. He held a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the light as he swirled it slowly. His posture relaxed, but his eyes locked on me with that familiar intensity. He didn't speak, didn't gesture for me to come closer. He just watched, a silent sentinel. And I knew in that moment that this was his design, his vision brought to life. My breath hitched as the pieces clicked together, the weight of his earlier words crashing over me like a wave. This wasn't just a gathering. This was the fulfillment of his fantasy, the one he'd laid out on that rainy night. I was to be the center of attention, desired by these 4 men, each of them here for me, with Leon as the silent observer. And everything, every touch, every moment, hinged on my consent. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs, each beat echoing in my ears as I stood in the center of the room. Their gazes felt like a physical weight, pressing against me from all sides, and I could barely draw a full breath. The warmth of the room enveloped me, a cocoon of heat that contrasted with the cool marble beneath my bare feet as I slipped off my heels, feeling the soft, plush rug beneath. The air was thick with the scent of melting candle wax, a sweet, smoky undertone mingling with the sharp, musky hint of cologne that seemed to linger around each of the men. Every detail sharpened in my senses, as if my body was tuning itself to the moment, amplifying every texture, every smell, every sound. The soft jazz still played, a low, seductive hum that seemed to vibrate through the floor, matching the rhythm of my racing pulse. I took a tentative step forward, and the semicircle of men shifted slightly, their attention unwavering. My skin prickled under their scrutiny, but it was Jules who moved first, closing the distance between us with a quiet grace that belied the intensity in his eyes. His touch was gentle, almost reverent, as he reached out to brush a stray strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered just a moment too long against my cheek, cool and deliberate, sending a shiver down my spine. His gaze held mine, searching, as if he could read every conflicted thought swirling in my mind. There was a tenderness there, but beneath it, a hunger that made my breath catch. I felt my lips part slightly, but no words came, only the sensation of being seen, truly seen, in a way that was both comforting and unnerving. As Jules stepped back, Damon was already there, his presence heavier, more commanding. His rough hands found my waist, the calluses on his palms scraping lightly against the fabric of my dress, as he pulled me just a fraction closer. His breath was hot against my ear, a stark contrast to the coolness of Jules's touch, and I could feel the heat radiating from him, raw and unfiltered. "You're trembling," he murmured, his voice low, almost a growl, and I couldn't tell if it was concern or satisfaction in his tone. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, a flush of warmth spreading through me, and I hated how much I craved the roughness of his grip, the way it grounded me in the chaos of my own emotions. Then Raphael was beside me, his charm a palpable force as he leaned in, his voice a smooth whisper of Spanish that I didn't fully understand but felt in the pit of my stomach. His fingers traced a slow, deliberate path down my arm, light as a feather yet electric, leaving a trail of goosebumps in their wake. His touch was teasing, calculated, and I couldn't help but lean into it, drawn by the effortless way he seemed to unravel my defenses. His eyes glinted with mischief, but there was something deeper there, a promise of something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. My heart stuttered, caught between the thrill of his attention and the weight of what it meant to let myself feel this. Miles was last, and I had to turn to him, giving a small nod, a silent permission. He'd been waiting, his massive frame still and patient, but when he stepped close, his presence was overwhelming, like a storm rolling in. His touch was firm, but not harsh, one hand resting lightly on my shoulder, the other brushing against my lower back. It was different from the others, steady, almost protective, yet charged with an undercurrent of raw power. I could smell the faint scent of pine and earth on him, a reminder of the wildness he carried, and it stirred something primal in me, a reckless abandon I hadn't expected. Each touch, each man, felt so distinct. Jules' tenderness, Damon's roughness, Raphael's playfulness, Miles's strength, and yet they blended into a symphony of sensation that threatened to drown me. Through it all, I couldn't stop glancing at Leon. He hadn't moved from his armchair in the corner, his whiskey glass still in hand, but I could see the tension in his grip, the way his knuckles whitened as he held it tighter. His chest rose and fell with deep, controlled breaths, each one measured, as if he was anchoring himself in the storm of what was unfolding before him. I could feel his gaze like a physical touch, searing into me, pulling me back to him, even as I stood surrounded by his friends. My mind was a tangled mess, but my body seemed to know what it wanted, surrendering to the moment as if it had been waiting for this all along. I let go of the last threads of hesitation, stepping fully into the unknown, and it was both terrifying and exquisite, like leaping off that cliff I'd imagined at the start. The grand room seemed to close in around us, the flickering candlelight casting a warm, golden glow over everything, softening the edges of reality. I found myself sinking to the soft, expansive rug beneath me, its plush texture a grounding contrast to the heat building in my veins. The men moved with me, their presence a circle of intent, each one distinct yet part of a greater rhythm. It wasn't rushed or chaotic. It was deliberate, almost ritualistic, as if every gesture, every breath had been choreographed by some unspoken agreement. Time slowed, stretching thin, and I let myself drown in it, losing control in a way I'd never allowed before. My skin burned under their touches, each one a unique signature etched into my senses. Jules' hands were tender, tracing patterns along my collarbone with a reverence that made my chest ache. His touch was a quiet promise, a gentle unraveling of my defenses, and I felt my breath hitch as his fingers lingered, coaxing a shiver from deep within me. Then there was Damon, all raw hunger, his grip firm and unapologetic as he pulled me closer, his breath hot against my neck. His intensity was a wildfire, consuming, and I couldn't help but lean into the heat, craving the edge of danger in his hold. Raphael's approach was different, calculated and precise, his fingers dancing along my skin with a teasing lightness that sent electric pulses racing through me. Every move he made was intentional, a game of control that left me dizzy, my heart pounding in response to his silent commands. And Miles, with his quiet dominance, held me with a steadiness that felt like an anchor in the storm. His hands were rough from a life outdoors, but they moved with a surprising gentleness, guiding rather than demanding, yet leaving no doubt of the power behind them. My breath came in ragged gasps, the world narrowing to the heat and rhythm of the moment. Every sensation was amplified. The brush of fabric against my skin, the flicker of candlelight in my peripheral vision, the faint scent of wax and musk mingling in the air. My pulse thrummed in my ears, a frantic beat that matched the slow, deliberate pace of their movements. I felt like I was floating and falling all at once, caught in a current I couldn't fight even if I wanted to. My body responded on instinct, arching into their touches, seeking more even as my mind spun with the weight of what I was allowing myself to feel. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of sensation that threatened to sweep me under, and yet I welcomed it, letting it crash over me without resistance. Through it all, I was acutely aware of Leon, still seated in his armchair across the room. His eyes never left me, their intensity a tether that kept me grounded even as I spiraled. I could see the rise and fall of his chest, each breath mirroring mine, as if he was feeling every touch, every shiver, through me. It was as though an invisible thread connected us, unbreakable even in this moment of shared transgression. I felt desired by all, utterly consumed by the attention of these men, and yet I knew I was still bound to Leon in a way that went beyond the physical. There was a strange intimacy in this act, a deepening of our connection through the very betrayal of traditional vows. It wasn't just about the men around me. It was about him, about us, about the unspoken pact we'd made to explore the edges of our desires together, no matter how forbidden they seemed. The contradiction tore at me. How could something so wrong feel so profoundly right in this moment? How could I feel so exposed, so vulnerable, and yet so powerful under their collective gaze? I'm still on the rug, my body humming with the aftershocks of everything that just happened. My skin feels like it's buzzing, alive with a current I can't quite shut off, and my chest heaves as I try to catch my breath. The air in the room is still thick, heavy with the lingering scent of candle wax and something primal I can't name. My mind is a storm, a chaotic swirl of emotions crashing against each other. Guilt for crossing a line I never imagined I'd approach, satisfaction that seeps into my bones despite myself, and a strange, unfamiliar sense of empowerment that makes my heart race all over again. I've never felt so seen, so wanted, and yet so utterly conflicted. I sit there, knees drawn up slightly, my fingers digging into the soft fibers of the rug, as if it's the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. At a distance, Damon, Raphael, Jules, and Miles have stepped back, their figures now shadowy outlines in the dim glow of the flickering candles. Their faces are unreadable, each man seemingly lost in his own thoughts, as if the intensity of what we shared has left them just as shaken as it's left me. There's a quiet between us now, a stark contrast to the charged energy that filled the space moments ago. I can't tell if they're processing, regretting, or simply giving me room to breathe. But their silence feels like a wall, separating me from the connection we just forged. My eyes linger on them for a moment, tracing the outlines of their forms. Damon's tense shoulders, Raphael's still poised stance, Jules's thoughtful tilt of the head, Miles's grounded stillness. And I wonder what they're feeling, if they're as torn as I am. Then I hear the soft clink of glass against wood, a sound that cuts through the haze in my mind like a beacon. My gaze shifts, and I see Leon rising from his armchair in the corner, the amber liquid in his glass now gone. He sets it down with a deliberate motion, the sound echoing faintly in the vast room, and begins to approach me. Each step he takes is measured, purposeful, the soles of his shoes barely making a sound on the marble floor before they reach the edge of the rug. My heart, which had just started to slow, picks up again, a nervous rhythm thudding in my chest. As he draws closer, his shadow falls over me, long and dark, enveloping me in a way that feels both protective and possessive. I tilt my head up to meet his gaze, and those piercing eyes of his lock onto mine, unyielding, searching, as if he's peeling back every layer of my soul to see what's left after tonight. He stops just in front of me, towering for a moment before he extends his hand, palm up, an unspoken invitation. I stare at it, at the familiar lines etched into his skin, the strength I've always known in those fingers, and I feel a lump rise in my throat. His voice breaks the silence, low and steady, a quiet force that reverberates through me. Now you know what it's like to be desired by all. And I know you still belong only to me. The words land heavy, each one sinking into me, stirring something deep in my core. There's no question in his tone, no doubt, just a certainty that both comforts and challenges me. I swallow hard, my mouth dry, and after a moment of hesitation, I reach out, placing my trembling hand in his. His grip is warm, firm, a lifeline pulling me back from the edge of the whirlwind I've been caught in. He helps me to my feet, and as I stand, our eyes remain locked, a silent understanding passing between us. There's no judgment in his gaze, no anger, just a depth of emotion I can't fully decipher. Pride, maybe, or a quiet triumph, mixed with something softer, something that reminds me why I've always trusted him to lead me into the unknown. My legs feel unsteady beneath me, but his hold keeps me grounded, his presence a reminder of the bond that's always been our anchor, even in moments as uncharted as this. Standing there, face to face, I realize that no matter where we go from here, together we can navigate any path the future holds. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.